here to talk about the Silicon Valley real estate market geographically and graphically, and then the greater Bay Area being 13 counties. I'm Richard Calhoun of Creekside Realty. In respect of everybody's time, I'll jump right into it and do an introduction at the end. Here's the first heat map. Shows the active inventory today compared to the 10-year median for the same week over the past 10 years. Basically, my color scheme is red favors the seller, blue favors the buyer, red hot seller's market, ice cold buyer's marketplace. You can see that in Santa Clara County, we have basically between about 2/3 and 100% of the inventory you'd expect. In San Mateo County, you're right around 90 to 100%. In Alameda County, you're at 75%. You can see there's across the board a shortage of inventory. The one exception is Redwood City right now has almost 116% of the inventory you'd expect for this time of the year. Flipping over and looking at the offers, this is a measure of the buyer's demand side. Here again, we have less activity than we typically do. Less activity means less competition. Less competition favors the buyers, and that's why everything's blue in color. But for anybody that's out there as a buyer looking, they would say it's not a buyer's marketplace. And that's because the ratio between the two, since they're both on the low side, you basically have a typical hot Silicon Valley marketplace. And if you look at Silicon Valley, you're actually at about 80%. DUI is the speed of the marketplace, and it's not the slower the marketplace, but the days of inventory. How quickly would it turn? The lower the number, the faster the marketplace. So the fact that these numbers are less than 100% indicates that the marketplace is slower than normal. But now if you go up in San Mateo County and you do the same thing, you can see they're over 100%. In fact, Redwood City's at 170% of the inventory. So it's almost twice as slow as it would normally be for this time of the year. And Alameda County comes in at 83%. Alameda County and Santa Clara County are faster than normal. San Mateo County is either what you would expect or a little bit slower than normal. Now we're going to get rid of the comparison to the past and simply look at days months old inventory now. And the reason we can do that, and we can't do that with active and offers, is each micro market area was selected to try to group similar geographically close properties together, and they're all different sizes. So the number of active inventory and the number of offers accepted in any given micro market area would vary greatly, and it would be very difficult to determine anything from those raw numbers. And that's why I compare the 10-year median for each micro market area. So I have 20 micro market areas, and I'm comparing the data for each one of those 20 areas to today's data. Now we've gotten rid of that, and we're simply looking at the raw count. And the reason you can look at the raw count for days of unsold inventory, it's simply the ratio between the active inventory and the sales. So if you have a large micro market area, both numbers will be large and the ratio would be the same. Basically, I consider less than 6 weeks on the marketplace to be a fast market. And that's the theoretical, because this is the theoretical time to sell if no new listings came on the market. So if you're less than 6 weeks, you're a shade of red. If you're more than 11 weeks, you're a shade of blue. And again, you can see that the expensive areas in San Mateo County and Oakland are the only two areas that are red in color. And they're both right around 90 days, plus or minus 5 from 90. Most Silicon Valley is red in color to differing degrees. Silicon Valley, your moderate priced homes are the fastest, right around 17 days. Your affordable areas are, closer to 35 days, and your expensive areas are closer to 50 days. In San Mateo County, you're a little closer together, but you're much higher numbers. You're going from 60 to 90 days in San Mateo County. And Alameda County is very similar to Santa Clara County, where their hot areas are down around 16, 17 days. Their slow areas are around 40 days, with the exception being Oakland at 80 days. Now, this is a number for the first time that may be easy for someone to just grasp in their mind without any explanation. It's how long does this long, typical successful seller take to sell? So you look at the sellers that are successful in selling their property and how long were they on the marketplace. And then you look at the 75th percentile. That's the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quadrant duration. And the reason you want to look at that is if you look at median, it's a very stable index and really doesn't tell you what the market's doing. And if you look at the average, it gets impacted by one seller that's finally successful after a year or two of trying, and that brings up the average significantly. by looking at the 75th percentile, you get the benefits of the median price with movements of the average price. So it's a real hybrid that works out real nice for this indicator. And you can see in Santa Clara County, in the reasonably priced areas, you're basically under 2 weeks, which means 3/4 of the sellers that try and are realistic sell their property. In some of the more affordable areas, you're up around 50 days. And again, that would be about 7, 8 weeks. And in your real expensive areas, you're at 113. San Mateo County, you can see the same concept. And in Alameda, I think the fastest number I'm seeing anywhere is Foster City, very small micro market. It's not uncommon to only have 5 listings in there. That's why it fluctuates so much. But Fremont's a reasonably sized area, and it's sitting at 9 days. And then Newark and Union City are sitting at 11 days. So Alameda County, at least those micro market areas have the fastest time on the marketplace. Now what we're doing is we're looking at ask price reductions. And what this does is it gives you an indication of what the market's doing compared to the seller's expectations. If the seller came on the marketplace and had to lower their price, the market was lower or slower or not as aggressive as the seller's expectation, which would be an indication of a slowing marketplace. Now, this could be a normally slowing marketplace or an unexpected slowing of the marketplace. And then conversely, as the numbers get less, that indicates that the market was either more robust or is accelerating, and sellers don't need to reduce their price. And the huge advantage is you don't have to wait for escrow to close. You know what the asking price was at the time the offer was accepted, and you know what the original ask price is, and you just do a ratio. And you can see, again, pretty aggressive marketplace. There are some areas of blue where you're taking 3-4% price reductions. There's 3 of them right off the bat: the San Mateo County coast, San Mateo County expensive areas, and Oakland. Those are the 3 areas where sellers are doing the biggest price reductions. In Fremont, sellers are actually raising their price 7/10, and that is pretty unusual, but it happens in some cases where the sellers are bombarded and want to raise the price to cut down the number of people. It also occasionally happens when someone entered in the information and made a typographical error that I didn't catch. If the property comes on at $1.5 million and then is raised to $2.5 million, those typos I normally find and correct. I correct them by looking at the individual listing and looking when the correction was made. But there are times where someone will come on the marketplace and they will try at, say, 749 and not get an offer to, they were expecting to trigger multiple offers, and then they raise the price to 900,000, but they wait for 2 weekends. That to me is not a price correction, and that is a price adjustment, and they are included. So I don't adjust out everything that someone could argue was a typo, but I try to use logic, and I'm consistent in that logic I apply, and consistency in statistics is most important. And the good news is the number of listings that do that are pretty small, and so it tends not to impact the data. But that is how you do get a positive 0.7%. And there are times when you see small ones like 0.1%, 0.2% are more common. And again, these are not sellers taking less than 1% or less than 3% price reductions. It's because you're averaging it over, and the vast majority of sellers take no price reductions at all. And that's in fact the next slide. Here's what I call the frequency of price reduction. What percentage of sellers are taking price reductions? And looking at the numbers real quick, the biggest number I'm seeing right now is only 30% of the sellers in Oakland take a price reduction. That means 70% of the sellers are not doing any sort of price adjustment up or down, because it's price adjustments. That's why the magnitude of average price adjustments are so small, and why later on I start looking at what the sellers that only the 10% of the sellers that take the greatest price reduction. In some areas, even if you look at Dublin, Castro Valley, Livermore, with only 6% of the sellers taking a price adjustment, if I look at 10%, 4%, almost half my sampling, isn't doing an adjustment at all. So even my 90% seller price adjustment is cut in half. Now we're going to flip over and look at what the buyers are doing. So this is what the buyers are doing when they're coming in with their offer. How much are they overbidding the property? And this is magnitude, average magnitude overbid. And again, I count those that come in over and under asking price. If someone comes in at 90% of seller's ask price and someone comes in at 110, those two would balance out and you'd have a 0% adjustment. So it's just giving you an idea of whether buyers are coming in more above or more below. And you can see in Redwood City right now, they're coming in more below. There's actually a 2.25% price adjustment in the negative direction. And if you go up to Milpitas, you have about a 7% price increase. And the highest one I'm picking up is Berkeley down here at 9% of a price increase. So you can see there's quite a bit of range. You can see we have some blue. You can see we have some pink. We don't have any real bright red. The brightest red is up here in Alameda and Berkeley. Now you're looking at the frequency of overbidding. So in Santa Clara County, right around 2/3 of the sellers are getting more than their asking price in the core. If you go down to the more affordable areas, the number's a little bit lower. And if you go into the expensive areas, the number drops to about 41%. It's just coincidental these two numbers are the same. You can go back and see many weeks they're not the same. The area where overbidding is the least common right now is in Redwood City, but somewhere between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 sellers are getting more than their asking price. And in most areas of the country, that would be pretty amazing. Pleasanton is 50%, Fremont is 71%. So the numbers do vary. And it's useful to have some concept of what's going on in the marketplace that you're actively looking in. Now, this is going back and looking at the appreciation we've had since the last 9 months of 2015. I was looking for a whole year period of time where we had stable market conditions to try to get the best indication of what the base year was so that we're not having fluctuation in the base year. Because anytime you do appreciation, if your base was fluctuating or your current day number was fluctuating, it's harder to make sense. I wanted a real solid base year, and you get that by picking a long period of time with price stability. And I could not find a whole year, so I took the last 9 months of 2015. It was the longest period of time I was able to identify since 2014 with the most stable pricing. Anyway, that was how the area was selected. So here, the red colors are greater appreciation than normal. I stretched out the colors. I'm thinking the 73 up here should be white in color. So this red goes with the 91, the pink goes with the 80, this pink goes with the 80, the blue goes with the 48. When I was cutting and pasting, I just stretched out my color codes too far. I will correct that, but it won't be corrected in the videos. So the colors on the map are going to be accurate, because if you can see, the map down here in Morgan Hill is not the bright red, but is almost a white color. And so it's the key that's off. So only the key is off. The map and the numbers are accurate. Now what we're looking at is the middle number is the median price that almost everybody follows. But instead of just following the median price, I also follow the 10 percentile price and the 90 percentile price to give you an idea what the range of in a given area is. And that helps you understand, a little bit more of the marketplace. For example, let's just pick South County because it's the top line. The median price is just over $1.25 million. What does that mean? Well, knowing that the bottom 10% is 815 and the top is 2 million, it's telling you that between that, for that $1.2 million range from 800,000 to 2 million, is 80% of all properties, with 40% being in this range of roughly 450,000, between 800,000 and 1.25. And then the other 40% is between 1 to 5 and 1 and 2. And it's not uncommon at all. In fact, the spread is typically more between the median and the 90% than it is between the median and the 10%. Anyway, 80% of the homes are between the two outlying numbers. The middle number is where you'd expect it. Here, color has nothing to do with the intensity of the marketplace, but simply which areas are the more expensive. So red is more expensive, blue is cheaper. Here's a summary. The concept of this slide is you can start over in the geographical area you're looking for and see the market conditions, which are the highlighted yellow up here. So these really are telling you market conditions. The reason active inventory and offers don't is that's the ratio, and compared to 10 years. And this would tend to indicate that it's a hot market. Meanwhile, you can flip over to the offers and it's a cool. What's really important is the DUI, the ratio. And I probably should highlight that, because typically if you're doing a hotter market than normal, you're going to be a hot marketplace. But appreciation and price has nothing to do with the conditions of the marketplace. or for the first time, I've added in the payment. So I calculate, assuming an 80% loan, and calculate what the payments would be in thousands, of 6.26 thousand to 8 to 9.8 to 15,000 would be the payments for the 10, 50, and 90% homes in Morgan Hill. So you can start with either the payments you want, or if you've been pre-approved by a lender, what the payment range is, or the geographical range, and then see what the market conditions are. Now we're taking all those 20 micro market areas, putting them in a blender and blending them up. If we were having a completely normal year, you'd be right here on this black horizontal 100% line. What you're having is the purple inventory is down here at basically something like 76%. Your number of offers accepted is down here at something like 72%, and that's giving you a DUI of something like 95%. Now, the reason DUI isn't above the 100% line is these three indicators are all determined independently. And so the median DUI does not necessarily happen in the same year as the median number of offers and the median number of active inventory, because the purple is above the offers. So you're having more inventory compared to offers, but yet the DUI is below where you'd expect it to be. And the reason that can happen is all three numbers I look at independently, and they happen in different years. So you can't do the ratio. If you did the ratio, you'd be up here above 100%. The key here is simply looking at the record low number of sales. And this is offers that are accepted, and we're at 1,094. So call it 1,100 sales. That number will tend to go up initially and then down just because of late reports of sales and then TFTs. But our previous record low was in 2008 and was only 1,400. So we're selling 300 homes already less than we've done. And you can see that in the last several weeks, we've been in the worst year. We had been in the worst year, then we got into the second worst year, and now we're back to the worst year. And it's only been recently that a few other media sources have been talking about this lack of software, but it's been going on basically most of 2023 and all of 2024. And I do believe that's important, but I also believe a lot of that was brought on by the pandemic. You had everybody's housing needs change overnight, which is why we had such a robust year in 2020 and 2021. Those sellers and buyers are all moved and adjusted their housing needs. And so you took away some of the pool of transactions that would have been happening in the current year. Here's looking at the payments for Silicon Valley. So up here, the red is the 90%, so the most expensive home, if you did an 80% loan, would be $25,000 a month. The typical home is down here around $11,000 a month, and the cheapest home is down here around $6,000 a month. Now what we're going to do is look at distributions. Each line on here is a weekly distribution, but it covers data for the previous 5 weeks. We're going to start off with this dotted blue line, and that's exactly a year ago, February 7th, 2023. And if you go, wow, that's not exactly a year ago. Well, we're looking at Friday's data. We're plotting that as if it was February 7th of 2024, which isn't here yet. And that way I have data up through Friday, because I use a real estate year that starts on March the 1st and then jumps forward 7 days at a time. So coming up on this March the 1st, I'm going to actually jump forward 9 days to get rid of the one extra day that you have every year in 365, plus the extra year of leap year, so that you don't keep shifting your calendar. I always compare March 1st to March 1st. I always compare January 3rd to January 3rd. I always compare February 7th to February 7th. And I have the option of either going back and comparing January 31st, which would be in the rearview mirror, or February the 7th. I've elected February 7th. Since it's not here yet, I used the data through midnight last night instead. So you can see the market goes up, and there's the peak, and then it comes back down. And these are monthly separation. Now we change to weekly separations. And right about here, you can see that we're going to start going up there. So you look at those huge increases. So you're at this time of the year, you have a huge reduction in the number of seller price reductions. reduction in the seller's price reductions is an improving marketplace, which is why you're going up and into the red zone area. Now we're flipping over and looking at the same thing with the buyers. What are they doing on overbidding? And we're starting off a year ago. You go up, there's sort of the peak right there. Now with closing data, now we're changing from month to weekly. With closing data, you have to wait for 5 weeks. So even though the ask price reductions have gone up dramatically, our overbidding hasn't changed yet because it's going to be another 3-4 weeks before we start seeing the 2024 transactions closing, and I would expect that number to start going up. Now we're looking at each component individually. The 3 color lines here are where you'd expect the market to be, a cool marketplace, and a hot marketplace. And this is based on inventory. The actual current data is the purple line. You have less inventory, slightly less inventory than the red line. The other thing I'll throw out is real estate is an optional event. Anytime there's a holiday, it negatively impacts real estate except for Mother's Day and Valentine's Day. But right now, this year, we have the 49ers that are playing the Super Bowl. They had their playoff games locally in Santa Clara, which had more social activities associated with the 49ers, which meant we got off to a slower start, meaning less listings, meaning less number of offers, and you'll see that in the data. But basically, you have a little bit less. The other thing I want to point out in this series of slides, starting here in January 1st of 2023, I've expanded the horizontal grid. The reason I do that is so you can see the historical data going back to 2014 and then also see the fluctuations. If I kept the same scale, it'd be very hard to see the changes. So the market's behaving like you'd expect it to be, but on the low side of the amount of inventory. Now to make it a little bit easier, I've stretched it out. I've stretched out the typical marketplace, and down here in the red area, that's a hotter marketplace than typical. Up here in a blue market is a cooler market than normal. The only line that is relevant to the previous graph, though, is the purple line and the gray line. So now I'm comparing inventory to where it should be. So we're basically, as you can see, somewhere around 76% of the inventory that you would expect at this time of the year. And the same concept now looking at the number of offers. Now the number of offers are pretty close to the blue line, but a little bit on the low side. It's following the normal trend. And so you have typical behavior with just less inventory than you'd expect. And here you can see typical behavior, but with less inventory. You can see now that last week was a big fluctuation. We pointed that out, and we said, was it an anomaly or whatever? And it turned out it was. And basically, you had actually more offers despite the 49ers playing last week than you did this week. Every week is different. I'm just talking about in general what happens. Now you're looking at days unsold inventory. It's following the absolute normal pattern, and it's right on typical. It's right on top of the gray line here. And so your market is no faster or slower than it typically is for all of Silicon Valley. Any geographical area could be faster or slower. And here is the same information. You can see you've just left the cool. So even though it looked like it was right on top on the previous slide, you can see that it's only about 94%. A low DUI is a faster marketplace. So it's 6% faster in all of Silicon Valley than it typically is. And basically, remember, San Mateo County is quite a bit slower than Santa Clara and Alameda. So if you actually broke this down by county, which we will do, I would expect to see San Mateo's DUI to be higher than anticipated and Santa Clara and Alameda counties to be lower. You're only looking typically in one area or whatever area you're looking in. You can't just say that you're having a typical year in Silicon Valley because it depends on what county, it depends on what micro market area. Now we're moving on to that 75 percentile days on marketplace. Here you can see that we're following the normal pattern where you have this run up and we're basically hit a plateau. And next week, based on the historical data, I'd expect it to roll over and drop down. But we're having a slightly hotter year than you typically do. So sellers are selling their house a little quicker than they normally do. And right now, the 75th percentile seller for all of Silicon Valley is about 39 days. Here's the same thing. So you can see that we're a little bit faster. This says that we're almost 20% faster on selling the property. And that's why I did this. is on a graph like this, it's hard to judge what this percent change is. And I think it's the percent change that matters. And the steeper the graph, like right here, it would be almost impossible to eyeball and see what the difference is. And here you can now say it's almost a 20% feed up of the marketplace. And that's why, it's red in color. It's a hotter than normal marketplace. Now you're looking at ask price reductions. Again, the great point about this data is you don't have to wait for the seller to close escrow in order to know what happened to the price. And what you're having right now is between typical and more than typical, which would be a buyer's marketplace, price reductions. More sellers are taking price reductions than normal. Here is the seller's ask price compared to typical. And you can see that they're taking, 1%, 100% would be their typical price reductions. Right now, they're taking somewhere almost about a 0.5% more price reductions than they typically do. Here's the 10%. So this is the first time I introduced this. So we're ignoring now the 70% to 90% of the sellers that make no price adjustment at all. We're simply looking at those sellers that adjusted their price the most, how much are they adjusting it? The purple line, you come over here and it says, oh, it's about 88 and a third percent. So that's about a 12 and 2/3% price reduction. It is noteworthy that even in our hottest marketplaces, sellers are taking about a 4.5%, almost a 5% price, closer to 5% price reduction. That's why you look at it. You don't want it to be at zero or stable at any given number. So the sellers that misread the marketplace do take significant price reductions, even in a hot marketplace. Here's seller price reductions compared to typical. So they're 20% more than normal. Here is the seller's frequency of ask price. Now the frequency is right on normal. That looks dead on to the gray line. Come over here and it's very close, but it's still, according to the calculations, it's still, what would that be? Maybe 90%, so 10% more price reductions, less price reductions than normal. Here's the average overbid. So now we're flipping over and looking at what the buyer's doing. And again, the buyer's just right there overbidding, maybe overbidding a little bit more because it's on the red side of the gray line. So a little bit more frequent overbidding. And here you are just a little bit above 100%. Here's the frequency of overbidding. How common is overbidding? Again, right about where you'd expect it to be. Here, it's just a little bit below. So I'd expect to be a little bit below 100% on the next slide. And here you are just a tad bit below 100% of the typical reductions. Here's the long-term price for Silicon Valley. The sloped line here is sort of the long-term appreciation. You'll notice a dip down in every year, including this year at the end of the year. That, in my opinion, really doesn't reflect property values. Yes, the median price does drop, but I think what's happening is feature of the holidays. People that are living in bigger homes tend to maybe have families or more people living in the house, maybe an extended family that maybe have more social obligations around the holidays, where those people buying smaller homes don't have as much social obligation for the holidays. Therefore, they make up a larger percentage of the market. The other thing that happens is there's a shift from expensive areas to inexpensive areas. So inexpensive areas make up a bigger percentage of the market share, potentially because of the size of the home is changing. And that's what causes this dip. And you can see the dip is consistent every single year. Now we're looking at the data for the 3 counties. Santa Clara County is in the blue, San Mateo County is in the orange, and Alameda County is in the gray. This is active inventory, so the level of inventory between the 3 counties is sort of dependent on the size of the county, so not related to each other. You can see where the long-term numbers are. The big takeaway is inventory is down significantly from where you'd expect it to be. Here's the number of offers accepted, same concept. And again, the number of offers accepted is way down from where you'd expect it to be. Here's the days of unsold inventory. And you can see now this is the ratio between them. And here they could all be the same, but here's you start seeing San Mateo County is the slowest at 50 days. And long-term historically, at least before the pandemic, San Mateo County typically was the fastest area and Alameda County was the slowest and Santa Clara was in the middle. Now you have Santa Clara in the fastest and Alameda County in second and San Mateo County in last. So basically San Mateo County close to the workplace went from being the most desirable area with the fastest marketplace to the slowest and the least desirable. And why is it the least desirable? Because sellers historically are used to getting a premium for being close to work, which, the amount of that premium has gone down now that we are working remotely at least part of the time. Here's your days on sold inventory for the 75th percentile. You can see the huge collapse. The collapse happens every year, but again, you'll see in between the huge collapse, orange San Mateo County is now on the top. And typically back here, they were more grouped together. And, it'd be hard pressed to say San Mateo County was the best because I don't think it was really the case. In fact, I would think Santa Clara County was probably the fastest for the 75th percentile market. But the way I read this data is they were basically on top of one another, and now there's separation with San Mateo County being significantly slower than Santa Clara County and Alameda. I would say Santa Clara and Alameda are very similar to each other. This is the magnitude of price reductions, and San Mateo County is doing the biggest, Alameda second, and Santa Clara the least. Frequency, the same sort of order, but here Alameda County and San Mateo County are on top of one another. Also with the drop here at this time of the year, where you're going from the remains of a slow marketplace in 2023 at the end of the year to a fast start. And you can see that happens every single year. The dark vertical line is the beginning of the year. And remember, the horizontal scale changes to roughly half. Although these two are on top of one another, I would almost wager Alameda County is doing a little bit better. Santa Clara County is doing the best with only 10% of the sellers doing a price adjustment. This is the magnitude of overbidding. Alameda County here outbids Santa Clara County, and San Mateo County does come in third. Frequency of overbid, look at the drop in San Mateo County. So San Mateo County, only 40% of the sellers are getting overbid. In Alameda County and Santa Clara County, it's up at 55%. And here's the appreciation. Look at the huge run up here, and this is going to be showing up in the sale price. Just in the last 2 weeks, I think it's been now, San Mateo County median price skyrocketed, but Santa Clara County is doing way better than both Alameda County and San Mateo on long-term appreciation. And here you can see the San Mateo County price increase. Just 2 weeks ago, it was below Santa Clara, and then it took off. And that gives credibility to my concept that the impact at the end of the year is bigger for the more expensive areas. Again, this year, last year, they were on top of one another, where just, in the summer, the San Mateo County was quite a bit separated. And the pandemic seems to have enhanced that. But even coming back here to 2017, the drop in San Mateo County looks greater than the drop in Santa Clara County. Here's the same information on regular paper. The previous was on log paper. And here's your estimated payment. The formula is the same for all of them, and so it's going to be in the same order as your price. With that, here's the actual numbers, so you can look at the three counties: Santa Clara County, San Mateo County, and Alameda County. You can look at the metric that you think is most important, but you can see the number of new listings coming on the market is skyrocketing, way more than the number of active listings. So that tends to indicate that whatever new inventory comes on the market, the buyers are there to take it away, and that's typical for this time of the year. With that, we leave Silicon Valley and we move on to the greater Bay Area, which is 13 counties. Here are the numbers. You got the individual counties over here on the left, and then the metrics across the top. You can look at whatever's more important for you. Here's the inventory. You can see inventory is down across the board. You can see it really failed for North County and Central Valley because they're roughly the same as Santa Clara County now, and there was a huge separation back historically. Here's the number of offers. The three counties here are typically been very close together. So it's just that they've been impacted the same, but there's been a huge drop in the number of offers, but there's not the differential. San Francisco's Marin and the Central Coast, Santa Cruz and Monterey, are much smaller counties, but they're also showing a lack of offers. Here's your days of unsold inventory. You can see Silicon Valley is the fastest. Central Coast is the slowest. The other three are fairly close together, but you can see that there's a little bit of difference. Here's the time on the marketplace. Again, San Francisco Marin is the slowest, Silicon Valley is the fastest, and the other three are pretty close together. Greater Bay Area, Silicon Valley has got the least amount of price reductions with less than 1%. San Francisco and Marin has the most, followed by the Central Coast. This is the frequency of the seller's price reduction. So 10% in Silicon Valley, but 25% in the other 4 regions. Magnitude of overbidding. You can see that here Silicon Valley has the most at almost 4% overbid. Central Coast has the least with less than 100%. And Central Valley and North Bay are essentially right at 100%. And San Francisco Marin is about 102%. Here's the frequency of overbidding. Silicon Valley doing the best again, and Central Coast doing the least. Appreciation. San Francisco Marin doing the worst. Central Valley doing the best on appreciation. Sold price. Central Valley being the most affordable, cities being the most expensive. Here's your estimated payments for the 5 regions. We've been talking about Silicon Valley real estate market geographically and graphically, plus the greater Bay Area, which includes 13 counties and 5 regions. This was week number 5 for 2024. To look at an archive of any episode, you can use the blue YouTube link, or you can use the shorter green root URL to get to the archive on YouTube. If you use the green URL and add 2024 Saturday morning at 9 a.m., you can join the live presentation. If you add to the end a suffix of H for handout 2024 0203, you get today's handout. I did get it up about 10 minutes before 9 o'clock, which is my goal. And I also have a specific episode by just putting in the year, date, month code on the root URL. I'm Richard Calhoun with Creekside Realty, working with buyers or sellers here in Silicon Valley since 1981. Happy to help you. If I have any questions, please unmute yourself. Not seeing unmuted mics, I'll go to a recap. This is a recap of my data. The slides that are going over are what we just went over. Some of the unique features of my data is instead of using monthly data, I use a 5-week moving period. And that's because there's a huge weekly influence in the real estate marketplace, and it depends on how many weekends you have, and more importantly, how many weekdays you have where most of the activity gets reported from the weekends. I also look at things other people don't look at. For example, 75th percentile of the seller's days on marketplace. Almost everybody either looks at median and average days on market, both of which have a significant disadvantage. The median is a very stable index, and when it jumps a whole day at a time. And the average gets influenced by one property being on the market for a long period of time. Both of those negatives gets eliminated with the 75th percentile. I also, many years ago, back in about 1998, introduced days of unsold inventory, which is the ratio between the supply and demand, which is a very basic measure in a free capital society. Many people have since copied me, and a lot of people talk about months of inventory. But in Silicon Valley, where you have sub-month levels, it really doesn't make sense to talk about months. Months are also trouble because what they typically do is they look at the month of January and compare it, use that, and that fluctuates, which is the whole reason I got away from monthly data. I also look at seller house price reductions, and that becomes important because it's a leading indicator. It shows you shifts in the marketplace before sale price shifts because you don't have to wait for close of escrows. My whole goal is to try to break down the real estate marketplace in actual usable data to make decisions. I also look at, instead of looking at just the Bay Area, I look at 20 micro market areas within Silicon Valley, which is 3 counties, San Mateo County, and Santa Clara County. And right now it's very clear that the 3 counties, specifically San Mateo County, is not behaving the same as Alameda County and Santa Clara. So it's important to know what's happening within your micro market chasma as well as within the whole marketplace. Almost everybody follows just the median sold price. I follow what the 10 percentile price and the 90 percentile price is. That gives you a range in each one of the micro market areas. I calculate an estimate for the monthly payment. Of course, that's going to vary depending on how much loan you get. I use an 80% loan at jumbo rates for the national average. So you can shop for better rates. You can put more money down. You might have to put less money down, but it gives you some indication of what's going on with payments for the typical buyer. I also look at the comparative long-term appreciation going back to 2015, the last 9 months of 2015, so you can see what's happening. And you really see the impact of the pandemic, and areas that used to be very well, specifically San Francisco and San Mateo counties, you can see how they've struggled, especially since the pandemic. And it's all local and it's up-to-date data. The data I'm reporting on any given weekend is going to be through Friday. I also use a bizarre real estate calendar year. We have a discontinuity in every year because we have 365 days, and even weekly data would be 364 days. So every year you have one extra day, which would shift all your data. On leap year, that happens on February 29th. So I have set March 1st as the start of my real estate year, and then I go forward 7 days at a time. So very shortly, we're going to be coming up to March 1st again. We're going to be on February 20th, and then 7 days later, you'd expect data from February 27th. But if I did that, I would not be consistent for all my other data. So I actually skip 2 days, jump forward to March 1st, and then start going back my 5-week period of time. My week data is covering the same calendar dates every year. I compare March 1st to March 1st. I compare January 3rd to January 3rd. I compare February 7th to February 7th. Yes, February 7th is going to be a different day every year, and that impacts the level of inventory because your level of inventory sort of caps out a couple times during the week, and it varies. It varies as much as about 25% within a 7-day calendar period, simply because of when real estate agents put new listings on the marketplace and when they report sales. It's just a fact of life. You can't get rid of all the impacts, but being a working real estate agent broker, I see what's happening in the marketplace. Every decision I make is to better understand the marketplace. And at any time, my contact information is on the bottom of every slide at the beginning and end. Feel free to reach out with specific questions, however you feel comfortable, text, email, phone call. It doesn't really matter to me. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoy the work. And I'm very open and receptive to any feedback. In fact, some of the suggestions have come from you, the viewers, and have been incorporated. So thanks. Take care. Bye for now.